have a role model to get to be 105. Up to now, I aspired to be 100. And I'm very proud to be introduced by such an important, influential, ethical, humanitarian journalist, Mary Sanchez. Thank you. Thanks to all the planning and thoughtfulness and creativity that's gone into this conference, we have something very unique, really unique in this room, me and you together for an hour, which is, a rare opportunity in a gathering of unique people, because each of us is unique, and a combination of unique people that has never happened before in exactly the same way, and will never happen again in exactly the same way. So I'm hoping that during what's called here the question and answer time, we can reverse this hierarchy we have because of our numbers, with me looking at you and you looking at each other's backs. This is a hierarchy. Hierarchy is based on patriarchy. Patriarchy doesn't work anywhere anymore, including truly feel as if we are in a circle and talking to each other, and I get to learn from you, and you should not feel confined to questions. You should give us answers. We could all use some. You should make organizing announcements of any upcoming troublemaking meetings you think. If there's something you don't want to stand up and say, pass me a note, I'll read it. I'm going home this afternoon. But in addition to that, we have a almost unique subject, because people do not discuss aging very much except as its medicalization or it's being confined to worries about the healthcare system, or to people who are perceived as aging, when in fact all of us have this lifespan, and young people need to learn the scope and learn from us. It's interesting that it is the one thing, both it's an economic, a cultural, a physical event through which we all go if we're lucky, right? And yet it is the thing about which we are most likely to lie. And I did it too. I mean, when I was in my 30s, my late 30s, my sister, who was 9 years older and has 6 kids, had made us 2 years younger to her kids. And I was also going out with a man who had been married to an actress who kept saying to me, "You're crazy to tell your age. No women tell their age." So for a whole year, I made myself 2 years younger. I felt like such a jerk. I felt so inauthentic. It's so interesting how that one thing, can make you feel false and worried about being found out and foolish, So it's why when I turned 40, I became publicly 40. And I said, to some reporter who kindly said, "You don't look 40, I said, "But this is what 40 looks like. We've been lying so long. Who could know?" That's the single thing to which I got the most response. So I began to realize how much of a penalty aging was. But as I thought about it more, I realized that I had spent an extremely long time lying about my age when I was young. I was 12 and this tall, and working as a dancer in Toledo, Ohio, pretending to be 18. Hello? And the only difference, I think, is that there's less social disapproval for lying your age up than it is for lying it down. But in both cases, we are prevented from being authentic. And what that tells us is that there is a huge bias toward the central years of life. We are neglecting both youth and age at the same time. And we are therefore downplaying the talent of that time. We are causing young people to think of deferred life, as if life can't happen to them until they are older. And older people of thinking with regret or deception. It is insane. Think of the amount of human talent that we are missing or suppressing or not realizing in ourselves. Now, first of all, as you've already heard, all of us in this audience will average a longer life than ever before. We are living in that era, and so we have that opportunity. It's actually been increasing at about 3 months per year since the mid-1800s. And as you know, people over 65 and 85 are the fastest growing age cohorts, and women are 60% of that age cohort. I would only add that what is killing men is the masculine role. If you deducted from the statistics all of those deaths that could reasonably be attributed to the cult of masculinity, that is speeding, violence, gun deaths, tension-related diseases, men would live about 4 years more. And gradually the gap would narrow. For instance, women and men who are priests and nuns are only about a year apart because they live very similar lives. So I would like to say to all the men here that the women's movement has 4 years of extra life to give you. This is not a bad offer. But in general, we've gone as a nation, this nation, and like many other developed and well-to-do nations, we've gone from 50-something as an average age since the mid-1800s to 70-something now, and we could reach 100. I mean, that is projected. But I must say that our culture has lagged profoundly behind, because not only are we rendering invisible older people and younger people in a way, and focusing on only with a biased sense on the central years, but we still have the notions that we had from 50. For instance, that marriage is only successful if it lasts for a lifetime. As Margaret Mead said, marriage worked better in the 19th century because people only lived to be 50. Think about that. So yes, maybe some people are going to be married for a lifetime, but lots of people are going to not marry at all, marry and not have children together, raise them and go off amicably to another stage of life, live with and love members of the same sex, with and without children, and some people are going to do all of that serially. So we just have to stop with these norms, these cultural norms that have no relationship to our life expectancy these days. And there is a very important trend, which we also talk about in a way separate from aging, that could put an end, and is beginning to put an end, to the steady progress in life expectancy since the mid-1800s, and that is obesity. If the approximately third of the population that is obese, medically, dangerously overweight, has not to do with aesthetic judgment, but with health. And in some cultural and ethnic groups, 50% are obese. And this obesity is not related to wealth, it's related to poverty. And that is a huge condemnation of the ways in which we manufacture food, sell food, feed children. You know, I don't have to tell you all this, and I'm very grateful that Michelle Obama is focusing on this. but I don't think we see it yet in terms of life expectancy. It is, if you look at the statistics, it is the single thing most likely to stop the steady rise in life expectancy. When it comes to the other end of life, the youthful end of life, we also don't think about the impact of our eating habits on our younger people, either in ways that especially affect girls in addition to obesity. For instance, the average age of menstruation that was as high as 15 or 16 in the earlier days of this country is now as low as 9. And that's because, partly because of an increased healthy diet, but also because of too many hormones in the meat especially and so on. And so you could see it especially, for instance, in Puerto Rico, where before they also began to regulate the amount of hormonal injections into chicken, which is a mainstay of the diet. Both boys and girls were beginning to have secondary sexual characteristics as young as 5 or 6. And that increases the cancer rate. Right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, we in this country have to be aware of this too, not only physically, but also culturally. We blame young girls for getting pregnant early when they have 5 or 6 more years than they ever had before of additional time in which they can get pregnant. There used to be a time in which one could experiment and be sensuous as young without getting pregnant. Why are we blaming them, in addition, of course, to depriving them of sex education, comprehensive sex education, which has become, you know, we're the only country in the world in which sex education is the one subject in which you're rewarded for your ignorance. Yeah. So, you know, all of these events of aging and age itself are not just physical, but also cultural and also behavioral. And the culture is a circle. The culture influences our behavior, and our behavior changes the culture. So in trying to look for what is shared, I think, you know, lesson number 1 is age depends also on what we do. And lesson number 2 is feelings about aging change profoundly from one culture to the next. We have only to look at the original African and Asian cultures to see those in which obviously aging was valued much more. It's a great irony, it seems to me, that as the number of people in aging categories has increased, the cult of youth has increased. People in this country have not been more honored as time has gone on from the mid-1800s to now. Even though their numbers have increased, they have become less honored. And we see with the industries of the media, medicine, plastic surgery, fashion, movies. I mean, think about movies, you know.